Good morning, friends and family of the show.
Right.
Uh, we're back with some more music conversation because apparently everybody and their dog decided this week was a good week to drop an album.
Yeah.
4th of July is coming up. Want to get their plays at the barbecue, at the fireworks show, wherever, and that's just where we are. So
Yeah.
there was like five albums that we were considering talking about for this week. We have the Imagine Dragons, which if
hmm
you've clicked on this is probably why you're here
Right.
because that's the one we'll be reviewing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But obviously, TikTok's sensation, Jaden Hossler, uh, formerly or still known, I guess, he keeps going back and forth everywhere
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
whether it's Jxdn or Jaden Hossler. So
Right.
there's that guy dropped.
hmm
Um, Lil Yachty and James Blake dropped a project. Lupe Fiasco dropped a project, and Megan the Stallion, all among other artists, decided, June 28th is a great day for albums.
Right. This is gonna be our week. That's what they all thought.
Yeah, and then I will say I haven't listened to the Lil Yachty all the way through yet, or the Megan the Stallion. I haven't subjected myself to that yet,
Right.
but um, yeah, I don't think anyone was stepping too much on anybody's toes with these drops.
No.
And before we get into the Imagine Dragons review here, just briefly, I think we both got a chance to listen to most of the Jaden Hossler record. I also listened to the Lupe Fiasco. I don't know if you got to that one at all
Not
yet,
yet.
but what's your thoughts on the new Jaden Hossler? I believe it's titled "When the Music Stops." The
Yeah.
album.
It's from what I've listened to, I think I have like four or five more tracks left
Mm-hmm.
on the album. Um, I'm gonna say it's a step backwards from his first project. And my favorite song from him, Chrome Hearted, I believe is the correct title. Um, I think it's a step back, and that's not saying it's a bad album. I just definitely think that there are songs on there that are not very strong. Doesn't feel like they reached their full potential. But then there were definitely um songs where they were a great listen. I loved the lyrics. Definitely downloaded a couple and planned for them to be in my rotation for a little bit. But like when Chrome Hearted dropped, I was telling you like I really like this new sound. It'd be cool if he could incorporate more of this and then some of like his old sound with um Tell Me About Tomorrow, I think is the album.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would have been awesome. I should have actually spoke to him when it came to advice because he didn't listen
Right.
respectfully. But it's not great, but it's not bad. It's like it's mid. It's a mid album. And I just hope he gets better from there.
Yeah, I'll agree with pretty much everything you said. I think that for the most part, it's not like an atrocious album. Like there's for sure worse projects out there that I've listened to this year. Um, there's a couple redemptive moments on the album where I'm like, this is a good song. I enjoy this quite a bit.
Yeah.
But for me, it felt like he took his first album, Tell Me About Tomorrow, was a lot of you could tell there's some heavy inspiration from other artists in there, whether that's Blink 182, MGK, Green Day, a little bit of Juice World. Even you kind of hear sometimes Ian Dior, those kinds of guys. But it was still his own avenue. It's
Yeah.
it's like he took things from those artists and did his own thing with it, which I respected a lot. And as a first project, I don't really demand that much more from an artist. That's why it was a project I really enjoyed.
hmm
But with this one, I feel like he takes a step back in that regard. It feels more like a Blink 182 wannabe album and a Kid Leroy wannabe album and it's like split on those two avenues. Like there's either just this super cheesy over the top pop punk, alternative stuff to it, or this like really mellow laid back pop hip hop inspiration stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just not really doing anything for me. I think, like, head to head, I would say I prefer 95% of the tracks on the past project over this one.
Yeah.
um it's not going to be making any album of the year lists for me, but it probably
No.
also won't make any worst album of the year lists
Right.
for me. So I'm with you on that one. Before we get into Imagine Dragons, I'll also just briefly touch on the Lupe Fiasco project, because I gave that one a listen. Don't
Yeah.
know if we'll ever get to it on the show here, but it's very solid. I will say I enjoyed it a little bit more than his previous project. Lupe's a guy that I really have a ton of respect for as a lyricist and as a rapper. I think he's one of the most underrated lyricists currently, and even in his career, I think he's been a little overlooked. I think his label kind of did him a little dirty earlier in his career, pushing him into this pop mainstream lane that I don't think was really his lane. And I think that was a disservice to the prime of his career. But
Mhm.
I will say also, sonically, a lot of the more modern stuff that he's done hasn't been for me every time. Like I said, I respect the lyricism on it a lot, but just as far as my taste in kind of what I'm going for from the sound beat side of things, it's not really for me. But I do really enjoy this project a lot. I think this one could be one that makes an end of the year
Mhm.
list for me. It's not going to be a top 1, 2, 3 for me just because
Right.
of those preferences, but it's very well done, and I did enjoy it a little bit more than the last one. So it's a good project.
I'm assuming with it not being on the show, you didn't give it a hard rating. What would you, just off the top of your head, what would you rate it out of 10?
I would give the Lupe probably like an 8
Mm,
ish. Like
okay.
you said, I didn't give it a hard rating, but it's very good. It's a little short. Beat selection wasn't for me every time, but it's really well done. It's
Cool.
a good album. I'd
Cool.
probably give the Jaden like a 5 to a 6,
Yeah.
somewhere in
Yeah.
there.
I'd probably do the exact same.
Well, without much further ado, let's get into this. Everybody's favorite or least favorite, depending on who you are. I've heard them called, one of the best mainstream pop rock bands of this century. I've heard them be called this generation's. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name of the band. Why? Who's the band that everybody hates?
Womp
Why am I
womp.
forgetting?
I have no idea.
Oh my goodness, I'm embarrassing myself.
You are.
Um, I keep wanting to say the Backstreet Boys, but that's not who it is. Anyways, like I've heard them called this generation's worst artists and band, and everything in between. I think there's such a variety of fans or haters for Imagine Dragons.
Right.
And I'll say I think they're both a little bit over the top. I, for one, really like Night Visions, their earliest project. I think in the terms of mainstream pop, it was a very cool debut. There's a lot of tracks I still like on there.
Mhm.
And then throughout their careers post that era, there's been things that I have really enjoyed and things I have really not enjoyed. So I think both sides are a little over the top when
Yeah.
it comes to either hating them or loving them. What's your general impressions with Imagine Dragons coming into this project here?
Coming into the project, I was kind of looking forward to it. I know that Eyes Closed came out as a single, right? That's the one that you sent me.
Yeah,
Um, that song had me um come in with a little bit higher expectation for them. After listening to it, you you brought up that everybody and their dog wanted to, have a song where everybody's listening, while grilling for 4th of July. And I'm gonna tell you right now that there's not one person on this planet that will be playing an Imagine Dragons song off this album this year at all. Th- this was
unless they're
probably
delusional.
right, of course. This is the lowest rated album I've ever rated. on this show. Um, it was very, very hard to get through. Um, it- the it actually made me pretty sad with how much I didn't like this album because, like you said, the early projects, everyone loved Imagine. Not everybody, but the people who respected them and liked their stuff really liked it,
Yeah.
and I was one of those people. Um, So it kind of hurt a little bit. I feel like they disrespected me as a consumer by releasing this.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's really all I gotta say.
Yeah, no, I'll agree with a lot of that. Nickelback. Nickelback is the
Ah,
band that I was thinking of.
yeah.
I had the back in my mind, and I was like, Backstreet Boys. It's not that with the, you know. Anyways, Nickelback had a little brain fart. They've
Redeeming
been called
quality.
this generation's Nickelback, and after this album, I might agree a little bit. But let's talk production here. Um, because I feel like they're kind of known for this explosive production style. Like
Yeah.
there's the hardcore rock aspects of it, there's the pop aspects of it throughout their whole discography, and then they kind of have some innovation in there as well. Um, this one really was just like, to me, it was so uninspired, it was so unoriginal. What I like in this last listen that I gave it before we did our episode, I said in my mind, I was like, this is a blend of the worst kinds of production from AJR, Drake, The Killers, and old Imagine Dragons projects. It's like if you took the worst aspects of all of those
Oh,
artists and made production for this album with it, this is what it was. It had like the worst Island Flow Drake stuff, AJR's like corny electro stuff,
yeah.
and then like weird inflections from the Killers inspiration in there. Anyways, it wasn't for me. I gave the production a 3 because it was pretty boring. And it hurt my soul a little bit just in expecting
Yeah.
that to be a great part of Imagine Dragons.
Right. Yeah, I also gave it a 3, which sucks because I feel like I've been able to find just about anything in anyone's album production wise. I feel like it's really hard to have a bad production. It's I feel like you have to almost try to make it really bad. I agree with most of what you said. It just feels like they're throwing in all these different genres or inspirations, and at no point do they mesh well together. It's like oil and water. Like they grossly try to combine and never do. Um, it man, except for like honestly, like the only exception to most of this is like Eyes Closed. I thought Eyes Closed as a song was pretty solid. I'm not even gonna say it was perfect because whatever. But yeah, the production just, dude, it sucked.
Yeah. I mean, enough said. I love the analogy, oil and water. That's a
Thank you.
great way to
Just
describe it.
came up with it on my head.
I love it. Let's talk vocals here
Mhm.
because Dan Reynolds, their lead vocalist, is a guy that I feel like he has a very distinct voice and a
Mhm.
very cool voice. And I'm frequently in the past have been impressed with his range because he doesn't always showcase it, but then every once in a while I'll be like, wow, that's actually pretty good vocal range that he's showing off on this track. And I'll say the vocal abilities in terms of his range on this album aren't that bad, but the stylistic choices in terms of inflections and flows and the performance that he gives across on most songs is just it's extraordinarily weak. Um, it's like it's almost like he was like, how can I do the corniest worst vocal performance on this part of the track. And again, it's
Yeah.
not like his range that's bad. It's just like, why are we doing, this weird chorus thing on Wake Up? Like, at the very, like, it's right off the bat. And
Yeah.
Wake Up, he's like doing this weird staccato, like, just offbeat vocal that has there's no merit to it. It's
Is
you know
is
it,
is that the song where he's like,
yeah, 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 that's exactly what I'm referring to. Like, what the heck is he trying to do? There's no musical merit to this.
I heard that song and I was already pissed off, dude. I was about to go to
Yeah.
bed and I went to bed angry.
It's track one. We've got Dan Reynolds making chainsaw noises on the wake up track.
Oh, I was so mad.
Yeah.
Would you
I gave
yeah,
vocals a 3.
that's fair. I went a little bit lower. I gave vocals a 2. Um just what the actual heck is any of this? Dude, he it seems like a kid, like a teenager that's like really wanting to try to make music, and like puberty had just hit, so their voice is all sorts of messed up, voice crack galore, right?
Yeah.
And like he's just trying to come in hard, like he is him, but nobody else thinks so, but they're patronizing him, saying this is a good one, like
Yeah.
one day you're on to something, my guy. And it never works out.
Yeah.
Um, it, yeah, I don't really have much to say. There wasn't a point where I thought any of the, once again, Eyes Closed is discluded from this because I thought that was pretty cool. Um, but there was not one point of this album where I was like, man, like, okay, like in this track, the vocals are actually like good. No. It was all pretty atrocious. And I would like to rip my ears off during most of this. Dan, I know people that know you. Like, if I get into contact with you, I'll let you know how bad this was. Let me be the guy to let you know, don't do this. I'll find you one day. I'll help you out.
Yeah. He needs it. He
He
needs.
needs it from anyone. I'm not even saying I'm qualified, because
Yeah.
I'm not in no way. But man, whoever told you is
Yeah.
worse qualified than I am.
Somebody's got to let him know.
Somebody's out.
Yeah. Um, I mean, you're the lyrical, technician. That's what you come to music for. How are you feeling about the lyrics here?
Dude, they're trash. He's not like, it's another one of those things where like, okay, you don't go to Imagine Dragons. You don't go to Dan Reynolds for lyrics, right? But like even in mainstream pop, at least have something of decency. You don't. Like I gave lyrics a 3 because I felt like there were only 3 tracks on this album where I was like, okay, like I'll give you the benefit of the doubt because I like where your head's at, but it's not a full idea that came to life. You only got half of your idea out that came out good. And I think those tracks were, once again, Eyes Closed. I think Fire in These Hills, they were on the right track but fumbled. And then same with Don't Forget Me, I think it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the ideas, I can hear it. You're
Yeah.
almost there, but you didn't sit on it long enough.
Yeah. And I'll even disagree with you. I don't think Eyes Closed is a well written song at all. I think it's like
Yeah.
really like, and I'll get into this in a little bit when I talk more about the concept of the album and that kind of thing. But I think it's so frequently corny, like poorly thought out, mind numbing, just pseudo intellectual, like gobbledygook nonsense that he's just spouting. Like, you know, I wrote down specifically "Gods Don't Play" and "Take Me to the Beach" as
Bro.
like, or "Gods Don't Pray," not play. "Gods Don't Pray" and "Take Me to the Beach" were just like so mind numbing and pseudo intellectual. Like he's trying to be so thought provoking and like, look at the cool stuff I'm bringing up, and it's like, this is so bad. Like you're like 30 something. You don't even know what you're talking about. Um, yeah. I also said that the album kind of clearly shows. I think Dan Reynolds wrote most of this. I think he's normally the songwriter.
Yeah.
Probably has some help here and there, but it just shows him as a man very clearly internally conflicted. And if
Yeah.
you look up personal stuff going on in his life, you'll see that that's very much the case, and
Yeah.
it probably has been for the last 5-10 years, I'll say. Um, but it's like he's trying to convince himself that he has it all figured out by just like shouting that to the masses, like,
Yeah.
look at everything I've figured out and I know. And it's like, dude, you are like, if we're drawing parallels here, you're like in the middle of Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers right now. Like, he needs to listen to that album and
Oh
be
my
like,
gosh.
oh, Kendrick, help me out, man. Like, how do I actually say something that's going on in my life and not just gaslight myself into thinking that I'm doing well?
That was a great little put together. I like that.
um, but yeah, there are a couple of brief moments of vulnerability that make the album better, and
Mhm.
I said specifically, "Don't Forget Me" is one of those, because even on past projects, like, you're right, Dan Reynolds is not the guy I come to for songwriting, but there's tracks on Mercury Act or on Night Visions where I'm like, this is relatable. This is kind of,
Yeah.
inspiring. It's bringing you to a headspace that he's in, and I respect that. But that's the only moment that I really got like this on that album. And I'll move. I gave lyrics a 4,
Mm.
just a little bit better than you because of that moment. And I'll move into the concept because these are kind of tied together for me, which I gave a 2, because this album, Loom, really weaves its way through midlife crisis with little true vulnerability, thought-provoking content, or sonically interesting material. Uh, and it leaves this half-hearted tapestry of their most forgettable work. It's really an embarrassing album. Why he named it after a video game he played as a child, I have no idea. But I had to make fun of the album name with some wordplay right there.
Nicely
So
done.
I am sorry. Like, I feel bad making fun of this midlife crisis that he's obviously very clearly going through. But it's like, my gripe with it isn't that he's going through a midlife crisis or like is having a hard time, but it's that he's pretending and projecting onto everybody else the problems that he's going through like aren't his.
Yeah.
If that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like, G-Eazy's new album is abysmal. It's so bad. But he's got a song on there, I can't remember what it's called, but it's about his mom who just passed away.
Mhm.
Sonically, there's nothing there for me.
Yeah.
In terms of his vocal performance, it's nothing good. I'm never going to disrespect that song though, because I can tell he put his heart into it, and it's like vulnerable and hard for him to say.
Yeah.
So I'm never going to make fun of that. But when you're coming at me with songs like Gods Don't Pray or Take Me to the Beach and all these things that you're like, pretend like you have your life together, when it's obvious you don't, from everything else in this album, I'm just going to call that out a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't feel bad at all for making fun of this album. I think it's just abysmal. I don't. Okay, hold on. Let me slow down and
yeah,
collect
reel
myself.
it in just
Yeah,
a
just
little bit,
just
just
for a
real
sec
quick.
because I would have said something that later I just would have thought about for like a good 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, I if you're going through something like I can't tell you how to feel or nothing like that. Like whatever you're going through in your midlife crisis, then go through it. Right? I'm sorry that that's happened. Like whatever it may be, in the nicest way possible, go see a therapist and go buy yourself a nice car and go down like the coast of wherever the heck you want, like any other normal person with a midlife crisis. Like, I don't need to listen to absolute garbage. Like, stop. Retire. Just hang it up. You're obviously like, I don't know if this is like that point where you're like done, where like, maybe the wheels aren't turning no more. Like, and that's okay. It is 100% okay. But if you're going through something, you should probably go see and talk to somebody first. Not within your industry. Go talk to somebody professionally that could maybe help you out. Maybe put together a little plan. Hey, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to check on you on this day, see how you're feeling. Figure something out before just saying, you know what, I'm going to drop an album where like you said, everything seems so put together. That's what we're going to do. Because whoever hyped you up to do this did you dirty, Dan. And
Yeah.
the rest, I only know Dan. But
Yeah.
I gave
Yeah.
concept a 2 because I did it. I
Hey,
still,
I'm right there with you.
yeah, bro.
Yeah.
I might need to like start hitting you up before we record, saying, "Hey, what's the concept so I can rank this?" Because I still never get it.
Yeah.
Anyways,
No, and like I said, for me, it's just it's the very thinly veiled like cover of having it put together that really rubs me the wrong way. Because, like I said, if it's one thing to have a vulnerable, honest midlife crisis album and say a bunch of nonsense that I don't agree with,
yeah,
but if you're truly speaking from the heart and it's really what you're going through, I'm never going to critique that because that's your
right,
thing, you know. But it's just the like it's the little mask of like I've got it figured out and you guys don't. And it's
right.
like, no, dude, like we can all tell you don't. Um, before we spend too much time on this, let's move into features. There's only one. I don't even really know if it's a real feature, but we've
Right.
got J Balvin on the remix of Eyes Closed. And I'll say it's not like I don't really expect or want necessarily features on Imagine Dragon projects. I think they've forever done well on their own without many features, if any. Um, but I will say the sole presence of J Balvin simply like is a poorly covered attempt to like drive streaming numbers. Like there's
Yeah.
no reason for him to be on the song. There's no
No.
reason for him to be on the album other than just like look at our connection, let's
Right.
make a TikTok moment. So um I gave features a 2 because like I don't really care that there's not features, but throwing J Balvin on just was weird and didn't like it.
Yeah. Yeah. I gave it a 1. Because I 100% agree. I think that was totally unnecessary. Um, and part of it is also personal preference. Like I'm not too much into other languages in songs, and that might just be because I don't understand what's saying. Actually, no, because there's plenty of like Spanish songs that I vibe to. I've listened to a bunch of French songs, so I'm not even gonna say that. This one just wasn't my vibe. Um, but I do agree that Imagine Dragons are great, or in the past they've been great just doing it themselves, like you said. I think if I think this is one of the times where you need to sit back, look at your album, realize like even if it's just like kind of okay, like it could be better. Like if it's at that point, I think you should start looking and finding people. Like you're already in an experimental lane all of a sudden for no reason with the production alone. Why not just try it out and like throw in some other features? You have connections. Like we've heard Lil Wayne on a remix. Like right, was it Lil Wayne or was it Kendrick? I always mix up these two songs.
It, they've both
It's
been
Lil
on they've both been on separate songs with him. And they've got
Even better.
JID.
See, like it's oh
Yeah.
man, like if you're gonna already do something experimental and you're pulling the trigger on that, you might as well try to find more redeeming qualities and get yourself some features. Like just to throw in one random one on a remix of a song at the very end of your album just seems ridiculous and like unnecessary. So if you're gonna give features, throw like two more guys on there and like sprinkle it into the actual mix. I don't want a remix. Like, give
Yeah.
me actually something good. So I gave it a 1.
Yeah. I'll also say the reason besides just the fact that J Balvin was a weird addition, because like normally, if I dislike a aspect of features. Like it'll knock it down a little bit, but not like down to a 2. But by the end of this like 9-track, 10-track project, I was like so sick of just hearing Dan Reynolds' voice that it was like, just give me something
Yeah.
original. You know what I mean? Like, give me
Yeah.
something else. Even if it like, I don't even need it to be like a rap thing or like a hip hop thing or anybody like that. Even if you got like a Youngblood or Tom Morello to do something on the guitar, or like a Halsey, or just anybody that could have done something cool
Anyone.
alternative with them. Like any of that would have been welcome. This one should be pretty quick and easy here to wrap this up. Replay value. Where's this standing?
My first ever. 0.
Fat 0 for you?
Fat 0. Because I will never come back to this album. Ever.
Yeah.
There's nobody can say, hey, let's turn on this song. I will immediately hear it and tell somebody. I don't care if I'm not on aux. If it's somebody's household, I'm either leaving the house or I'm personally skipping the song. And I'm going to yell at the person who decided to play this song. It's a 0.
Yeah. I gave it a 1. I think occasionally I would play Eyes Closed, maybe here and there. It's not like it's,
that's valid.
you know, it's not like it's a classic of theirs or even a great recent song of theirs that I would say. It's almost like a guilty pleasure song for me. I said that to you when it came out. I was like, I don't even really think this is a good song, but like it's kind of got a vibe to it every once in a while. There is some merit to the track Don't Forget Me, but like it's not memorable enough that I'd ever come back to it. They've tackled this very similar topic on other songs in a much better way. Other artists have done it drastically better than they do on this album. So I'll probably never visit that again. That kind of segues, like those two are the only two that I could include on this like best and worst and underrated thing.
Yeah.
I said Eyes Closed was probably the best. I think it's the most well-rounded. Don't Forget Me, probably the most underrated for me. And the worst, I said Gods Don't Pray, just because it was like so pseudo intellectual. It was like it
Wait,
drove
which
me
one
up a
did you
wall.
say for worst?
Gods Don't Pray.
Oh yeah, that one was.
It like drove me up a wall because like religion aside, like if someone disagrees on religion, that's neither here nor there. That's your prerogative, whatever. But it was just to act like he's knows so much when it's like everything you're saying is like utter nonsense.
Yeah, 100%. So earlier I did misspoke. I'm not saying Don't Forget Me is I've changed my mind or nothing like that, because I wrote down that it sounds like it's only half done.
Yeah.
So still decent. But the one that I was actually talking about that I wish it was a full song was In Your Corner. I liked the idea of In Your Corner, but I don't think that they did anything with it. But it could have been real good. I agree with Eyes Closed being the best. My underrated were for me it would have been In Your Corner if it was filled up. Same with Fire in These Hills. I thought that was another one that could have done really good. The worst one that I just hated was Kid. It reminded me solely of 30 Seconds to Mars.
Yep.
Yeah, you know exactly which
I know
one
exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, it was
and that's like a terrible song on that 30 Seconds to Mars album too.
Yeah, so to have a worse version of that is saying something.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I even in my notes, I wrote down, I said, Kid, no, worst one. That's it. So that's my list.
And to round this whole thing out, where's this thing sitting out of 10 as a whole for you?
1.8. It is.
That's pretty low.
It is the worst rated album I've ever rated in my life. I would rather listen to anything else. Give me the Taylor Swift episode again. Rather than this.
Wow.
Yeah. No. After
Very
this,
crazy.
I started rooting a little bit for Taylor to. No, I wasn't rooting. That's a lie. But
only thing that could have made this better was a Taylor Swift feature.
Nah.
I ended up a little higher than you with a 2.5 out of 10. But yeah, it's down there. I think it's the worst one I've rated for sure. Dan and Shay and Lil Uzi were both in that realm, but I think this might be the worst for sure.
Yeah, this will be on if we do a worst albums of the year. I don't know if we did that last year.
We
Um,
didn't. I felt like it was a little mean to do,
well,
but maybe we
I
need to
think
after
this
this
year,
album.
yeah, I think this year we need to make this a
Okay.
point again later on
Yeah.
that is the worst album of the.
Yeah.
I'll go further to say decade, century,
Oh my gosh.
lifetime. I've never heard a worse album. I'd
Wow.
rather the Kanye and Ty Dolla $ign album.
Yeah. Wow. There
Oh,
you go.
it feels good to get all of that off my chest now.
Yeah. It had to be said. It had to be, gotten out in the open.
Yeah.
Fans of Imagine Dragons, I'm sorry, wasn't for us.
It shouldn't be
If
for you
if you
guys.
guys, yeah, it shouldn't be, but if you love it, somebody's got to
Seek help.
pay their bills, I guess. So, run up their streaming numbers because you're the only people that are going to be listening to it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's all I have to say.
Yeah. I'm good. I'm good now.
There's nothing more.
No, not
Well, it's a pleasure as always, and
right.
we'll be back here next week. Don't know what we'll cover yet, but we'll get
It'll
there
be
when we
better
get there.
than this.
I hope so.
Yeah, me too. Can't do
Cheers.
bro. Yeah, cheers.